We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 27a. On the previous Amud, Chizkiah said that the way we know that the flaying and the cutting up of the animal, the way we know that the hefshit and the nituach does not have to be done by Kohanim, is because the pasuk says that the Kohanim place the fire, they place the wood on the Mizbeach, and that comes to the exclusion of the flaying and the cutting. That doesn't have to be done with Kohanim, that can be done with anybody. The Gemara says, what kind of limud is that? Don't we need that pasuk for the item itself? In other words, we need to know that the v'nasnu ha'esh, the placing, the fire in the mizbeach, needs to be done by kohanim. Rashi says, you need to know that that has to be done by a kohen. Why should that be an exclusion that hefshit and intuach don't need to be done by kohanim? So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Simi Barashi says, Ashkachte la Abaya, I found Abaya to have a mizbar le'lebrei. He was explaining this drush of Chizkiah to his son as follows. Pasuk says, V'shachat, that he shechs the animal. Shchita bizar ksheira. So we learn out from there that shchita is kosher when it's done by a non-kohen. So how do we know that that should be the case? Rashi says, lishna demas nisenhu, lomar psula shenizkakes lavi mikra lachshera, means to say, why should we even think that shchita should be only by kohanim, that we need to go out of our way for a pasuk to tell us, no, it's okay if it's a non-kohen. Why would we think it would not be okay? So the Gemara explains, since the pasuk says, it says you and your children have to watch in terms of the kahuna. I might have thought that even when it comes to shchita, it has to be kohanim. It cannot be non-kohanim. Talmud lomar v'shachat es ben habakor lifnei Hashem v'ikrivu b'nei Aaron hakohanim es adam. Pasuk says he does the shchita, and then it says the b'nei Aaron hakohanim, they're the ones that receive the blood. Mikabala v'elach mitzvahs kahuna, from the time of receiving the blood and onward, that belongs to the kohanim. That's a mitzvah for the kohanim. V'samach yado v'shachat, and it says that the owner of the carbon leans his hand on the carbon and he does the shchita. Limed ala shchita sheksheira bizar. That teaches us that shchita is kosher with a non-kohen. So that's in terms of the limud of how we know that shchita can be done by a non-kohen. So now the Gemara argues as follows. Michdi, let us see. Mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. We already know that from the receiving of the blood and onward belongs to the kohanim. It's a mitzvah of the kohanim. So therefore, that's the limud of Chizkiah. V'nasnu b'nei Aaron lomali. So what do I need to say? That placing the fire on the mizbeach belongs to the kohanim. We already know mikabala ve'elach belongs to the kohanim. What do you need that pasuk for? Why do you need to repeat that belongs to the kohanim? It must be, as Chizkiah said. Again, this is Abaya's explanation of Chizkiah. Lemeute hefshit v'nituach. It must be saying to exclude hefshit v'nituach, meaning again the flaying of the animal, the cutting up of the meat of the animal. That does not need to be done by kohanim. But the Gemara says, V'akati, still, it's not true. It's itzrich. I still need this pasuk, meaning the pasuk of V'nasnu b'nei Aaron, that the children of Aaron, the Kohanim, have to put the fire, the wood on the Mizbeach. I still need that pasuk to tell us the Kohanim need to do it. It should not be an exclusion. Why do I need it? Because I might have thought, the placing of the wood on the Mizbeach is not an avoda that is ma'akev the kapara. It doesn't hold back your atonement. If you don't do it properly, it doesn't hold back the atonement of the carbon. So therefore, I might have thought, loti by kuna, it doesn't need to be done by Kohanim. So kamash malon, so maybe that's what the pasuk is telling us. V'nasnu b'nei Aaron ha'esh, it's the children of Aaron that place the fire in the mizbeach. It tells us kamash malon, it comes to teach us the boy kahuna, that indeed it does require kahuna. So still, Chizkiah's limud does not make sense. And the Gemara continues, ela mehacha, rather learn it out from here, meaning we have a different limud to teach us that hefshit and nituach don't require a kohen from the following pasuk. Pasuk says, "V'yorchu b'nei Aaron haKohanim es hanisachim es harosh v'es hapader." It says in the pasuk that the Kohanim are the ones who arrange the various limbs that you put on the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, Michli, let us see. Mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. Like we said before, from receiving the blood and onward, we already know belongs to the Kohanim. V'yarchu lamali. So what does the pasuk need to say? That the arrangement of these limbs needs to be done by the Kohanim? So that must be l'me'ute hefshit v'nituach. Comes to exclude, again, the flaying and the cutting up of the animal. That does not need to be done by Kohanim. Gemara says, how do you know what it excludes? Maybe it comes to exclude the arranging of the two logs. Again, we said that you place these two extra logs on the Mizbeach. Maybe we're trying to say that does not need to be done by Kohanim. So the Gemara says, Mistabra divcha dechavasei mimayit. It probably has to exclude something similar in the sense it has to do with the limbs of the animal. If it says that the Kohanim have to arrange the limbs, that would make sense to exclude the flaying and the cutting of the limbs of the animals. That's a similar thing. Gemara says, Adrab, on the contrary, Sidor dechavasei mimayit. Maybe it means to exclude a different kind of arrangement. They have to arrange the limbs on the Mizbeach, but when it comes to arranging the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, the two logs, maybe they don't have to arrange it. It could be done by a non-Kohen. So the Gemara says, Lo salkadaitach, don't think that that's what it means, meaning don't think that it comes to exclude the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim. Diyamar Mar, because the master already said, V'hikriv haKohen es hakol hamizbecha. Pasuk says that the Kohen brings everything to the Mizbeach. Zu holeches evarim lekevesh. That pasuk refers to the fact that the Kohen has to bring the evarim, has to walk over the limbs to the kevesh, to the ramp. So holeches evarim lekevesh hu debay kahuna. We learn out from there that walking the limbs over to the ramp requires kohanim. However, holeches eitzim lo bay kahuna. When it comes to walking the wood over to the ramp, that does not require a kohen. And we also imply from that hasidor shnei gezirei eitzim, arranging the wood on the mizbeach, bay kahuna, apparently does require kahuna, and therefore we already know that the sidor shnei gezirei eitzim does require kahuna. So therefore, va'archu lamali, again, what does the pasuk mean when it says that they arrange the limbs on the mizbeach? L'mu'ute hefshet v'nituach. It comes to tell us the kohanim have to arrange the limbs on the mizbeach, but they do not need to do the flaying and the cutting. That can be done by a non-kohen. And the Gemara continues, and we'll skip the next few words of ve'ema hachanami legufe. The Gra takes them out. So the Gemara continues, elo v'hiktir hakohen es hakol l'mayasa. But according to this logic, what about the pasuk which says the kohen burns everything on the mizbeach? Why do you have to tell us kohen? Again, we already know mikabala ve'elach is for the kohanim. So the Gemara says ela, rather, and again the Gra puts in the words ela v'hiktir l'mu'ute hefshet v'nituach. Rather, this pasuk of v'hiktir, that's the pasuk that excludes hefshet v'nituach. That's the pasuk that says the kohen burns everything on the mizbeach, but you don't need a kohen to do the flaying and the cutting of the animal. That can be done by a non-kohen. V'hikrav hakohen es hakol hamizbecha. What about the pasuk again that the kohen brings everything to the mizbeach? That's what we said before. Zu holeches evarim lekevesh. That refers to walking the limbs over to the ramp of the mizbeach. Holeches evarim lekevesh hu debay kahuna. Holeches eitzim lo bay kahuna. Like we said before, walking the limbs over to the ramp requires kohanim. Walking the wood over to the ramp does not require kohanim. Hasidor shnei gezirei eitzim bay kahuna. And again, as the Gemara said before, arranging the two logs on the mizbeach does require kohanim. V'nosnu legufe, the pasuk which says that the kohanim put the fire on the mizbeach, they put the wood on the mizbeach, that's needed for itself, as we said before. Nothing is learned from that pasuk other than the fact that that needs to be done by kohanim. V'archu, now finally this pasuk of v'archu, when it talks about the arranging of the limbs by kohanim, so v'archu shnayim, v'archu is plural, it means two kohanim. B'nei Aaron shnayim, when it says b'nei Aaron, that's also plural, it means two more kohanim. Ha-kohanim shnayim, the word ha-kohanim is also plural, that means two more. And what that actually comes to teach us is lamanu. It comes to teach us litzleh, that when it comes to a carbon that's a sheep, sheta'un shisha, it requires 6 kohanim. Rashi over here says, this is as we said in the Mishnah, sheta'un shisha habasar b'chamisha. The meat is taken by 5 of the kohanim, v'akirbayim be'echad, and the innards by 1 kohen. And when the Gemara here says that the tleh requires 6, that's talking about 6 kohanim to carry the limbs over to the mizbeach. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Hamnuna says, Kasha leila Rebbe Elazar. Rebbe Elazar had the following kasha. Hai ben habakar ksiv, this pasuk that you're quoting over here, of va'archu b'nei Aaron hakohanim, which teaches us 6 kohanim, that's talking about cattle. Uben habakar esrim v'arba, but we already said before that when it comes to bakar, it's not 6 kohanim that are needed, it's 24 kohanim that are needed. It's a larger animal. So how are you learning out 6 kohanim by a tleh when the pasuk's talking about bakar? So the Gemara says v'nichale, but the Gemara says really Rebbe Elazar answered the question himself. Why? Because alo eitzim asher al ha'esh asher al mizbeach. Pasuk goes on to say on the wood which is on the fire on the mizbeach. So ezo davar shenemar bo eitzim eish mizbeach. On what item do we talk about eitzim, eish, and mizbeach? And Rashi over here explains v'nichale, and so Rebbe Elazar answered the question. Hadar mashani lehachi. He answered as follows: Alo eitzim asher alo eish kro yaseru. When the pasuk says on the wood, on the fire, on the mizbeach, that's actually an extra pasuk. Taksiv, because the pasuk already says v'nosnu eish v'archu eitzim v'archu nesachim lama lisu alo eitzim asher alo eish v'gomer. What do you need that pasuk for at all? Lemidrash Beis, so that pasuk is to make the following drasha. Dahani vav kohanim, these 6 kohanim that we're talking about, they're needed not for bakar, but they're needed for an animal which requires eish, eitzim, and mizbeach. What animal is it that I require you to arrange on the maracha, to arrange on the mizbeach, wood and fire for the mizbeach, for the sake of that animal? And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis.